And then we will go out to the lighthouse. Has anyone been out to the lighthouse before, the Point Meeting Lighthouse? Yeah?
I think I saw you there.
Oh, yeah? I'm here a lot. Yeah, the bridge to cross to the lighthouse is actually closed right now. They're doing repairs on it. So we can go through the tunnel out to the bridge. We just can't cross the bridge. So, but, okay, cool. I'm going to show you guys a couple more pictures. Those of you, you're from here, so you'll get this Bay Area picture. So if you look at this, this is a story about Save the Bay. You guys heard of that organization called Save the Bay? So if you look at this, the Bay Area picture, if you look at the gray area, this is areas they wanted to fill in. And if you look like over towards Berkeley, like all halfway out to Angel Island, they wanted to fill that in to build housing. So this was in the late 60s also, the same time as the Marancello development was being proposed. They're gonna fill it in for cheap housing. You guys understand ecosystems, right? Like if you fill in the shallow area between the ocean and the land, that would kill the marine life in the bay. Like that's a very important transition zone for a lot of different forms of life. So this would have been a disaster, but cool story. I like to tell inspiring stories about people that came together. This is a picture of the three gals that formed Save the Bay, Kay, Sylvia, and Esther. They were in Berkeley. They started Save the Bay and organized a grassroots movement where people came together and decided to take a stand against something they thought was not right. And they won. How cool is that? They saved the bay, and Save the Bay still goes today. They do like a lot of different coastal cleanup awareness, but they also talked a lot about pollution in the bay during the 60s and things like that. So the marine life in the bay is completely different than it was back then. So I got another cool story. Anybody know what this is? Brown pelican, yes. So they fly more in the evening and the morning, but we hopefully will see some. There are thousands of them here. So the story goes, late 60s, early 70s, pelicans were really struggling because of a pesticide. You guys might know the story. Who knows what pesticide? DDT. Okay. I like this. This is fun. So DDT was, for anyone that doesn't know, probably all of you know, but DDT was designed to kill mosquitoes. It was going to end worldwide malaria. It worked really well. It killed mosquitoes and everything else up the food chain. And I saw videos of like army guys with DDT and like a little spray canister. This stuff is great. Spray it on your armpits. You know what I mean? Trying to like make sure no one got mosquito bites. And it turns out it was highly carcinogenic, caused all these problems. It killed everything up the food chain. And it was killing brown pelicans. Once it got to the point where it was killing bald eagles, people freaked out. That's our bird. We can't kill bald eagles, right? So,
do you guys know the mechanism that DDT, how it was acting on the birds? How were they dying? The main mechanism wasn't neurological. Did you say it, Chris?
Thinning the eggshell.
Thinning the eggshell.
Yeah.
So it was basically like there was just no recruitment, because when the birds would go to sit on the nest and brood their eggs, the eggs would crack. So you basically would have no recruitment of young individuals into the next generation. So populations just
dropping dramatically. They do most of their nesting on, I think it's called Anacortes, or what is it? It's in the Channel Islands. One of those islands, something like that. Yeah, one of the islands in the Channel Islands is where most of the brown pelicans in the Pacific go to. They also get on the Baja, but I think it was in 1971, like 2 brown pelican chicks actually survived. 1972, again, DDT was banned, and now, cool ending to the story, we get to see thousands and thousands of pelicans, especially at night. I looked it up because I don't know why there were like so many of them flying that way at night. The Alameda Breakwater Regional Park, I think is what it's called, Alameda Breakwater, counts up to 8,000 brown pelicans every night. So, in the evening you'll see them flying by. But one of the monumental movements that got the DDT ban, anybody know who this is?
Take a guess, you guys.
Rachel Carson.
Thank you.
You guys know the book Silent Spring?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So Rachel Carson's book on Silent Spring raised awareness around the chemicals that were being produced and introduced into our environment And she was saying, we don't even know what this stuff is going to do to us. And thus began the battle. She ended up going to court against the big chemical companies. Chemical companies labeled her a witch because they said she loves nature too much. You look like a witch. I mean, I got a great quote from her also. She has a bunch of great quotes, but the one I put on here, but man is a part of nature, and his war against nature is inevitably a war against himself. This is a story I found about Rachel Carson. She came to the Marin Headlands when she was older in a wheelchair, and she went down to the Rodeo Lagoon, and right as she arrived, a flock of pelicans landed in the lagoon to thank her for her hard work. That's a true story, so pretty cool. So she stood up and began what was already going, but she's a monumental figure in the beginning of environmental justice and fighting for the environment and people raising concerns about what's happening to our environment. And they labeled her a witch, and they took her to court, and this whole big thing happened, and it changed things, right? She started the ball rolling, and it's still going today, although sometimes I feel like the voices anti-environmental are almost louder sometimes than people doing something for the environment. So, oh yeah, looks like a red-tailed hawk flying over there. I can't really see the color. It could be. There's another one over there. Ooh, that might have been a kestrel. Did you see that? Look at that. No, that's a red-tail too. You see the one land on the tree over there? Yeah. Yeah, this is raptor season. You guys were up there, so you know we saw kestrels that day. So Rachel Carson began the fight, and I want to ask you guys, why would a ranger have a picture of the Marlboro Man in this program at this point?
Tobacco farms.
Good guess. Anyone else? Okay. Marlboro Man says smoking's good for you, right? Would you believe the Marlboro Man?
Not now.
Back then, yes, that's my point. Did you know that for a long time it was legal for tobacco companies to advertise on television, but more importantly, to pay for their studies? It wasn't until the late 60s that it became, I think maybe mid-60s, it became illegal for big tobacco to fund big tobacco studies. And the reason I bring this up is that one of the guys I listen to, he always says, who paid for the science? You can find so much information out there today, it's mind-boggling. But you got to do the research and see who paid for the science. You can find something that says this or that or this or that, and it's funded by the Americans for well-being, but who paid for that? You dive deeper. So much of the information we have about what's going on in the environment right now is paid for by big industries that have a vested interest in keeping us confused. And the tobacco industry was the first one that used this tactic. They said our product is not tobacco, our product is doubt. This tactic has been used again and again. Dairy industry was exposed for using that same tactic in an internal memo, using the same quote actually. They said if people can just be a little bit overwhelmed by making a decision, they won't change. The way we keep things status quo is to keep people confused. Introduce doubt and no one will change, right? So we don't take smoking advice from the Marlboro Man, and we got to dive deep into see who's giving us our information, right? Because a lot of people are spending a lot of money to promote their agenda and keep us confused, and it's working in some areas, right? So
Can you guys think of other places where this is working in a huge way?
Recently, there's like a war between Prop 34 and Prop 35 that we're voting on this election period. And like, I've been seeing those ads that are like, you should help people like us, that require like life-saving costs or like life-saving care or medication to like lower the medication costs. But if you look at the association, like who actually paid for it, it's like the California like Renters Association and like the Landlord Association. And it's just a fight on a different prop. Which I thought was interesting. You should all look into that coming up voting. But yeah, that's a really good example.
Can you name a giant industry that's not spending billions of dollars to continue to promote their agenda and confuse us? Name an industry that's not doing that. Is another way of putting it.
What I was thinking also of just the fossil fuel industry
Yes.
and their sort of attack on our understanding of climate change. I mean, we've been so delayed in responding to climate change because of misinformation from the fossil fossil fuel industry. And we're also dealing with it with plastics right now, right?
Absolutely.
You know, plastics are not recyclable. That is a myth. And it's a myth that we've been sold by the petroleum industry. So it's very there's a lot of this.
Yes.
It's hard to sift through.
So when you mentioned the plastic thing, could you go explain a little bit more? Like plastics are not recyclable as far
They're
as
essentially not recyclable because there isn't a market for them.
Correct,
So what happens? So I think it's something like 92% of plastics just get thrown away, and even if they do get sold, they get sold to another country that also doesn't have the ability to deal with it. So they end up just getting not disposed of maybe appropriately. So maybe dumped in the ocean or dumped somewhere.
Yeah.
So most plastics that you use are not recycled and are not recyclable because there's no market for it.
Yep.
You have to have somebody who is a buyer who's going to make secondary products, and that just doesn't exist. So there's very few plastics that you use that are actually recyclable.
So what about like the bottles that always say like made of, is that July? Or
No, I think it's a small percentage. It's like just a very small percentage of plastics that's recyclable. So it's definitely right now the petroleum industry is being sued. So I can put some stuff on our Canvas site about that.
Yeah, they sold us the idea that plastic is recyclable, is what they told us. So like, okay, well, okay, I'm at least. And then you buy it, and all of a sudden you're thinking you're doing good by putting it in the blue can, and it's not going. It's going.
It's not
to like
getting
the ocean.
recycled
Yeah.
usually.
China for a while was buying thousands of tons of plastic to recycle it, and then they stopped. I think like 8 years ago. There's a documentary on this that was filmed in Marin, and they're at a reuse cycling plant up there where they're like, we have these giant piles of plastic
Storage containers.
containers that they used to ship to China, and now they don't have anywhere to ship them, so they're just sitting there. So, yeah, no,
Paper is the same way.
yeah,
Paper is becoming.
yeah,
Yeah, but paper is better than
Yeah,
plastic.
paper's
Yeah.
much better, but with being sent and then resold back to us.
yes, totally.
It's becoming the same.
Yeah, and plastic production is like quadrupled in the last decade. It's like pretty crazy. So, anybody else have any thoughts about Rachel Carson or Silent Spring or plastics or pelicans? No? Okay, cool. Let's head down. We'll go down